Okay, if you could just tell us who you are and what you do.
Okay, so hi, so I'm Suzanne Miller. I own Pitch and Canvas Limited, which is a camping and glamping site in Tattenhall. Originally started out as farm diversification, but I've also got another business, which is Pitch and Canvas Leisure Events, which runs alongside the camping, which supplies pop-up campsites for local festivals and things that we do. We work with schools to do school educational visits, and also Duke of Edinburgh Award. We work quite closely with the Cheshire East Council to provide the camping for their DofE students.
Okay, so you say it started off as farm diversification. Can you just talk us through how you've arrived at this point? Because you obviously didn't wake up one morning when you were 18 and say, right, I wanted to run a, well, maybe you did. I want to run a glamping company and I want to do pop-up tents. How did you arrive at this point?
It's been actually quite a long journey, if I'm honest. So my husband's had the farm since he was about 21, so he's been here a long time. And then when our son was born, we'd lived away, but we moved back to the farm after our son was born, which also meant that I had to give up my career. I worked for a large bank, shall we say, as a training consultant. So I had to finish my career to be able to bring up my son. So we initially took on two static caravans. We did bed and breakfast and 2 static caravans as holiday lets. And they sort of plodded along quite okay, not too bad, just for about 10 years probably we ran those. And then we got to a point where the farm wasn't doing quite as well as it should be doing, which is the vast majority of farms are like that at the moment. And we needed some form of diversification that would help support us better. And as we were already on that sort of track of doing some kind of holiday lets, that's when the campsite initiative really was born. So I've started researching how to sort of build the campsite and how to start the business and what we needed to do. But in the meantime, we're part of Bowlesworth Estate, and they started hosting the Carfest Festival. So I had this brainwave of an idea that we would do a pop-up campsite for it, which the first year we did, we started out with, I think we had about 10, 15 tents. And then every year we built that up and created it into a much bigger, hence the leisure events business. We created it into a whole business, which then provided the funding to be able to move forward and actually then initiate the campsite and Pitch and Canvas Limited. So it's been a long process, but the two companies really have taken off since about 2017. So it's the last four years that we've been sort of official business, if you like.
So how, I mean, up until, we'll talk about the last year in a minute, but up until March last year, you were flying really, weren't you? Is that right? You were going really well.
Yeah, it was bonkers. Really, both sides. The Pitch and Canvas leisure events was phenomenal. We had, I think we saw in the previous year, I think it was around about 1,400 DofE students stayed with us within 6 months. So we had quite a lot of camps going on, so that was quite good. We had, I think it was in the region of the same sort of figures of school children that stayed in residential courses, where they do 1 or 2 night stays, and then they do sort of like forest camp, and it was an outside company that organised that we worked with. And then the Carfest camping was, well, it was bonkers. We'd gone from initially starting out with 10 pitches to ending up with about 450 to 500, with around about 1,500 people here over a weekend, just on that one campsite. So that side boomed, really, really boomed. And then ultimately, of course, it had a knock-on effect to the campsite and the glamping. And that started out as just a small entity and then built its way up. And it's still only modest, it's still only small. There was around about 60k turnover. So, but it's built from nothing, and we'd done that within the space of sort of 2 years. So it was quite, and we managed to turn profit round within the first 2 years of trading, which was amazing.
But to go from 10 to 400, to go from nowhere to where you are, what do you put that down to? How have you achieved that? Because that's quite a phenomenal success.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of things. I'm going to be perfectly honest, there's got to be a certain element of luck.
Well, I think that's right. Yeah, I talk to a lot of people and they forget there's luck. They say, oh, there's no luck in business. And I always think that's such rubbish. If you work hard, you're more likely to be lucky. So I think that's really true. There's a lot of luck. So you've got a bit of luck, but it's not just luck. So what else have you done? What makes you successful?
A lot of hard work, blood, sweat, and tears. And I'm not going to lie about that either. It's been hard. It's been really hard. And there's been, I had to make a lot of sacrifices, because initially this journey began so that I could look after my son and I didn't have to go to work at a career, and ended up being the complete opposite, that I've spent probably certainly the 6 months of the season when it's really busy. I can be out here in the office from 7 o'clock in the morning till 8, 9 o'clock at night, and that's 7 days a week. So there is an element of work, if it's the time you put in, but I also think I've had a lot of help, and that is something I'm so grateful for. For example, how we met through the ERDF project. When I enrolled on with that, I had mentors and people supporting me and giving me guidance, and just that alone helped push, and I think gave me the incentive to keep working. And also they gave me a lot of knowledge that made me build the business. So for example, you gave me a load of help with regards to marketing, which I'd had no experience of. And I think it's a combination of all these things. I think it's little bits. I don't think you could say there is one thing that makes it successful. It's a combination of things and things that we've worked on. And there's been a lot of mistakes, and it's learning from those mistakes. Again, I put my hand up to making many mistakes in with regards to the business over the last few years, but you learn from them, and that's fine. And it's being able to do that, I think, is a key part of it.
What's the biggest mistake you've made then? You see, you landed yourself in there, didn't you? I mean, I'm quite happy to tell you 100 of my mistakes. If you think about the mistakes you've made, what's the one you've made that you actually learned from, that somebody else could benefit from knowing about? I mean, I made mistakes, for example. I'm rubbish at finances, and I made massive mistakes in trying to manage my cash flow and so on, and I have learned that finally after years of doing it. What's the biggest mistake you've made then?
There are many. I think finances is one. I think finances is possibly one of the areas. I've always been quite savvy with regards to keeping control on things. And I think one of the things that I was lacking, and probably still am lacking, and I'm actually seeking help with at the moment, I'm getting further guidance on, is the actual fundamentals of the business. So although I know what profit and loss is, it's actually understanding exactly how that's made up and what areas I should be targeting. So it's the specifics. So I always used to use our bank balance as a guide as to how well I was doing. So if there's money in the bank, I'd be like, wahoo, we've done well this month. And if there's no money in the bank, we go, okay, need to get some more sales in. But that's not business. That's just your cash flow. That you need to, I think, have a better grip on where it's heading, and forecasting and budgeting, which is now a key thing of what I do. I look ahead an awful lot with regards to the financing.
So if you could go backwards, and you could sort of take what you know now, the finance elements back, do you think it would have improved your performance? Is that one thing you would have changed?
Yeah, I think because a lot of the things I had to do were trial and error. And so I wouldn't have made some of those errors possibly on expenditure and things like that. It's easy with hindsight, to be fair. But I think a better knowledge, and moving forward, this is what we're working on now, is a better knowledge provides you with a better foundation for the business itself. And I think it's like your building blocks. If you've got that basic level that's good and secure, then you're just building your blocks on top of it to build the business. But you've got to have that foundation before you can do that. Otherwise, it's not stable.
So how far ahead do you forecast?
That's a very good question. So if we take the last year out of things, I would forecast. Yeah, so forgetting the last 12 months, I would usually forecast about 6 months ahead. I'd always have an idea, cash flow wise, at least 6 months into the future where we were up to, but also up to 12 months, depending on the time of year. So if it's at the start of the season, I would be working on a 6-month basis. And then as the season goes on, I start looking further ahead, because we have a time where we're closed. So I've got to know that I've got to be able to earn enough in the time that we're open to support the business in the months that we're closed. So you have to, in our trade, sort of pre-warn yourself, if you like, of what's coming apart from COVID. So I tend 6 to 12 months roughly is the guide that I tend to work on.
I used to have a daily, when I was under real stress, I used to have a daily forecast, and I used to go in every single day and used to drive me mad. How do you cope with the stress of it?
Well, yeah, good point. Ordinarily, okay, I actually work better under stress, always have done, until COVID hit. And I think probably everyone's been in the same boat over this one. COVID took a different kind of toll on the business because it wasn't anything I could control, and it was totally out of my control. And yeah, not great actually, probably with COVID. I think the last 6 months have been pretty tough. And again, I took decisive action and I spat my dummy out and said, right, that's it. And I threw the towel in September, and I've only just come back to work in the last couple of weeks. So which did me the world of good.
So you say you threw the towel in. If you don't mind.
No, not at all. I literally just, I didn't sleep, I couldn't eat, I felt ill, and I just thought there's more to life, and I can't do anything, I can't be open. So I just did the fundamental basics that just kept the business ticking over, making sure bills were paid, those types of things. Closed the phone lines, took no bookings, didn't come into the office, worked from the house if I did work, and then literally became a housewife again for a few months. So which was weirdly nice, but yeah, different. So but it's a chance to I think I'd become brain fogged with everything that was going on, and I couldn't see any clarity in where we were going to go and the future. And it's not just, we unfortunately got hit with COVID, but then when we were allowed to reopen in July, we were only open 6 weeks, and then we got flooded by 2 storms, so we had to close. So we closed for half of August and reopened again beginning of September, to then be open for a week and be flooded by United Utilities water main burst. And we haven't reopened since. So yeah, there's been a lot of stuff going on.
So I mean, really, other than even you take COVID out, it's been a pretty crummy year. And yet you do. And I know you say you threw the towel in. You didn't really throw the towel in. You kept your business going. And you do seem resilient. You always seem to me to be quite tough. So
yeah, I think, if I'm honest, I think there was a little bit of how can I put it? I think I had some personal stuff as well that I just needed to iron out. So I think it gave me the chance to say, do you know, actually, I'm going to just regroup. And I just literally took the time out, cleared my head, and because I wasn't under any pressure, I didn't feel under any pressure, I was able to put things into perspective, if you like, a lot better, and come up with a bit more of an idea of where I want the business to go. Because at the end of the day, COVID is really crap, you know, we all know that, but we are going to get past it. It is, you know, the business will still be here. If I can survive financially, the business will still be here, and hopefully it'll be really busy. So I just needed that time out to realize that, and to put my ducks in a row, if you like, and just refocus back on a little bit of me and get my time back, and a bit of work-life balance. And then I've ended up coming back now. I've had so many over the last few weeks, probably since Christmas, I've had so much enthusiasm come back that I'm like, right, here we go again. I'm off, and it's good. So I think it's done me the world of good.
And I would definitely say we closed down again.
And then closed down again. But you know, the good thing is, this time that we're closed again, there's no pressure on us at the moment, because we haven't got people here. We're not having to do the operational side of the business. So I'm able to work on all the things that I want to do that normally I don't get the time to do. So marketing plans, you're like this, Hootsuite. I'm starting scheduling with Hootsuite, and I've never been able to do this before. So it's all those things. I'm starting to rewrite my business plan. So my business plan is, we've learned as the years have gone on, I've sort of trailed off it a little bit. And I'm now back focused and rewriting a whole new business plan, because the business has developed, it's evolved. And so we're starting again. So it gives us it gives me more focus on where I need to go. So it's all positive.
Well, it is all positive out of a sea of negativity, isn't it, really? If you could go back 12 months then, because I mean, we're in this is January, so I think it was March the 13th last year, or the 23rd, everything went to hell.
Yeah.
If you could go back a year, what would you tell yourself? I mean, if I could go back a year and tell myself, I would tell myself basically that if I hang on for grim death, it will actually come out all right in the end, and don't one of the better word, Captain Mannering, don't panic. You can see that's my age, isn't it?
Yeah.
But what would you tell yourself? If you go back a year, what would you tell yourself that might just help?
Well, actually, it's almost in the same sort of vein of what you've just said. It would be don't panic. And I think that is a key. It's taking a deep breath, take on board what's happening and deal with it. Don't panic into things, which is what happened, because we went literally from overnight. We had Duke of Edinburgh when the lockdown was about to begin. The week before we went into lockdown, we had a huge group of Duke of Edinburgh students here, and the weather had been atrocious. We weren't able to get them onto the campsite, so we actually had to put them in our garden. So we had about 150 D of E students camping on our front lawn, but because of the COVID implications, it was chaos, because we had to make sure, because at this point COVID obviously wasn't, we didn't know the severity of it, but we still knew that there was a problem. So I had to go out and I spent a fortune on hand wash and sanitizers and special chemicals to clean toilets with, which cost me a fortune, but I panicked because I just thought, this is what I need to do. And
do you think you panicked though, or do you think that panic was in, I mean, this is not a business lesson we can learn, but I think panic was induced by misdirection from the government and everything. We were all told different things at different times, and you know, you open your pub, you open you buy all this stuff. Oh, it isn't needed. You've got to be 2 meters apart. Now you got to be 2. You buy all the signs saying 2 meters apart. Now you got to be 1 meter apart. It just seems to be a mass. I think we've been made to panic a bit more than perhaps.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think it's about our own taking our own responsibility for things. And with hindsight now, looking back on a lot of the things we did when we first were leading up to closing, to the lockdown, but also when we were able to reopen in July, again, that panic reappeared, because suddenly I was sat in the office working away, and then the next thing, the phone rang off the hook and I couldn't understand, and the emails were coming through and it was people wanting to book, and I had no idea why. And then when I looked at my phone, there'd been a press announcement that campsites could open. Right. So we didn't know anything about it. We had no warning. And so then you're dealing with that initial panic again of, shit, what are we going to do? Because, you know, we've now told that we can open in X amount of days, but we've got to adhere to all these rules and regulations, which weren't easy. So, so I think looking back on it, I wish I had not panicked and said, right, we need a couple of hours, don't answer the phones, don't reply to the emails, let's take check of what's happening. What do we realistically need to do to ensure we're in a safe environment? But we didn't do that.
I mean, you've had to cope with a lot of stress in the last year. You've seen your business and you've spent years building. And I had a meeting with a client, and the same thing. They built this business to this level, just gone overnight. Do you think you've developed any new techniques, any new ways of coping with stress? If so, give us something that somebody else could do. What do you do to cope with the stress?
Something I've learned in the last few days is talk to someone. It's cheesy. I know that everyone says it, but I think bottling it up and trying to, because I run the business on my own. So my husband runs the farm and I run Pitch and Canvas. And although we interlink a little bit, we don't really. I run the business and all the decisions are down to me. Everything sort of, it felt like everything was on my shoulders. So with regards to the stress side of things, I just bottled it up, and then it got worse because I wasn't sure how I was going to deal with things, and things that were worrying me, there's no outlet for it. And then recently, I've actually taken the decision to work with a business coach, and not sitting with them, talking with them on the phone and talking things through. It was like verbal diarrhea. It just all came out. And he just listened, and I said to him, I sound like a complete fruitcake. I said, I think I've lost the plot. And he said, no. He said, you don't. He said, you're in business, and exactly what you just said, it's stressful. And I think it's sometimes we're a bit hard on ourselves. So I think probably if anybody else was in this situation, don't be so hard on yourself. Talk to somebody, talk it through, and it's natural. It isn't anything to be ashamed of. It's just we all get stressed for different reasons, and when you've got a lot of things piling up, it happens. So, but it's how you deal with it, and I think that's what it's how you come out the other side, which is what you learn from it. And I think that's the biggest thing that you can take from it. It's not necessarily how you deal with the stress at the time, it's how you come out of it, and being able to learn from that experience to stop it happening again, and to get into that point, if you get to the point that I did, where I was just really, really fed up.
I think one of the key symptoms of the stress with a lot of people who are successful is you withdraw, and you don't
Yeah.
want to talk to anybody, and you lock yourself away in your little room, and you don't do anything. And so not talking to my stress comes from things I haven't done. So when I'm getting like that, I kind of think, right, I'm not going to look at my emails because there'll be something horrible. I'm not going to look at my phone because it'll be something horrible. I don't know, my most stressful times, I turned half my emails off, so because I didn't want when I was out to get a stressful email. And that causes me more stress because I've not done it. And I've learned, basically, if you get to that point, just turn your bloody phone on and do it, because it doesn't change anything, you're not doing it. Okay, that's it. The other thing, I mean, I won't take much more of your time. What I want to talk about a little bit, because you've said it a couple of times about you working from 7 in the morning till 8 at night, 7 days a week, and work-life balance. And you did put this partially because you had this high-powered, I'll say high-powered banking job, and you wanted to have more time to spend with the family and do the business, but you obviously haven't got that. How do you manage your work-life balance? Because I think for most businesses, managing, my own opinion is there's no such thing. There's no such thing as a work-life balance. I listened to a podcast and said it's a work-life flow, is the way he describes it.
Yeah.
And I think if you try to leverage a balance, that causes stress. But so I don't make any efforts to achieve a work-life balance. So what do you do?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I found now is, whereas I had been working silly hours, having had time off, I've forgotten how much I actually enjoyed doing some of the things at home. I love cooking, and I haven't been able to do that for years. So it was really nice. I've spent the last few months doing these things, bizarrely. And because of COVID, I've had to let the cleaner go, which means I've had to clean, which is just shocking, actually. But I've dealt with it. So
I don't think anyone will have much sympathy for you over on that one. I think your sympathy graph has just gone through the floor.
I know. I always said things will be really bad when the day comes I have to let my cleaner go. And Charlotte, who works for me, is absolutely amazing, and she will be laughing about this now. I said I can cope without makeup, nails, hair, anything, but I can't cope without my cleaner. Right. But these things happen. It's life. Anyway, so I think I've lost the thread now.
How do you do with your balance? How do you cope with the work-life balance? I mean,
so I think the one thing that I've taken on board now is that I'm actually saying that we're not open. It's different when we're open because I have to be on site and I have to be here managing things. But when we're not open, I'm trying to get a Friday that I don't work. So Friday, all the things that were stressing me out in the house that I need to do, or bits and bobs, personal things that I need to do, they get done on a Friday, and then I don't come into the office. And then the rest of the week, I can come in and I can choose my hours a little bit better. Well, we're like this. Managing my time when we're open is a different kettle of fish. One plus that I have got is a bit like what you said. I try now to think, I'm not going to stress over it. It is what it is. I'm out here, I'm working, I'm earning the money. So you got to take the rough with the smooth. Luckily, because my business is based where I live, so although my office is outside it on the campsite, I'm only 2 minutes from the house. My son, who's now 17, nearly 18, he works for me. He'll come out, so he's absolutely amazing. School holidays, weekends, after school, after college, he'll come out on the campsite and work. So I get to see him. My daughter comes out. She loves coming and playing in the office, and she's 12, so she'll sit in the office and she'll even answer the phone occasionally and do different things. So I think it's about, rather than stressing about the work-life balance, it's about adapting. Yeah. And it's just saying, this is us, this is how we operate, so as long as we're all happy, that is all that really matters. And if I can get some time off, great. And in the winter, I'll make the most of it, and I'll spend some more time. And I'm determined I'm no longer going to work in December. December is going to be my sabbatical every year. So
Good
I like
idea.
December off.
I think it's about accepting
look
it.
forward to.
It's about accepting that there's no work-life balance. It's just interlinked. But
It
strangely, my stress comes. My biggest stress over the whole of this COVID has been sitting there on Saturday, not working. I sat there Saturday, Sunday, thinking, what am I doing? Because I'm used to working 7 days a week. Worked 7 days a week for 3 years up until March, and I would literally sit there thinking, what's left to do? Okay, if we could just, if you could pass on one thing that you think could help other people, one thing you do that works, or one tip, if you were going to say to somebody who's starting a business or working in business, something that you do, that you think you could, what would you recommend them to do? If you could go on, or if you could just sit down with them and pass on 1 or 2 bits of valuable knowledge, what would that be? What would you focus on?
One thing that always surprises, and it still surprises me now, that is whether it's our business specific, I don't know, I'm assuming it'll be everybody. When I worked for the bank, I used to think networking was the cheesiest waste of time that anybody could do. And people that used to say the network, I used to think were just geeks, and it was an excuse not to work. And then when I opened the business and I started working with the EIDF project, and I started meeting people, and then they would introduce me to somebody and say, oh, well, we're all meeting, come and have a cup, whatever. Networking. And networking has opened so many doors for me and provided so many business opportunities. And it's given me a big insight. It's given me advice and insight from people, but it's also opened up massive opportunities and potential of where we can expand the business, and it shows you different pockets that you could get into, that place things, people that I wouldn't have perhaps dealt with before, that suddenly you start having a conversation and you both say, oh, well, we could work together on that, and we could do this, and you start sparking new ideas of how you can generate different revenues. And so networking, I think, for me, has been one of the biggest pointers to help me with the business. It's been one of the things that's really helped me the most.
I'd second that, because I think some networking is rubbish. I must admit, I've done loads, but I think the trouble is working on your own. You've got nobody to say, this is what the hell do I do here? And actually, there are a whole world of people out there who are willing to give you bits of advice, bits of time for free, because you give them bits of advice and bits of time. And actually, it's nice to have someone to sound off to for 5 minutes about, this is my issue, and they might have a solution. So don't shy away from networking. Keep going until you find. Okay.
It is, and if you get, when you get these opportunities, it just opens up doors for you. And I think, like you say, it's that being able to talk to people, and it also provides you with different opportunities to almost be able to showcase what you do, which ultimately then helps your business. Because for example, through some of the networking I'd done, I then got invited to go and speak, to be a guest speaker at the Lord Lieutenant's conference a couple of years ago. So I was really frightened, thinking, this is ridiculous, this is way out of my league, I'm small fry, because the other people were big game players. And anyway, I did it, and it was amazing. And okay, I probably was a bit out of my depth, but we did it, and it was okay, and I enjoyed it. But I made so many contacts, and it opened up avenues for me that I wouldn't have dreamt of even exploring, because I would have thought they were way out of my league. But it opens up these doors. So yeah, definitely network.
I think you have to believe as well that you're not out of your depth, that you're not out of your league, because actually you've run a really successful business, and you're just as important and just as good as they are. They might be turning over 20 times more money, but that doesn't make them any more knowledgeable or any better than you.
Doesn't.
You're not out of your league.
I think sometimes, I think you've got to have a bit of self-belief as well. And it's not necessarily, like you say, the size of your business. You could have somebody who's running a multi-million-pound business who hasn't got a clue. No. And it's not actually them that's generating that money. It's the people that work for them. Yeah. The only thing I'd say is that, where we've got to, I'm quite proud of it. I've done it on my own, and it's just me. And we're now at the point, once COVID passes, our next step is to then take on, we're looking to bring in a warden, which is a bit like with your work-life balance. We're looking to take on staff that will help do some of the things to eliminate some of the time that I have to be out on site, so check-ins and things like that. So I can focus more on the operational side of it, on the office side of it. So yeah.
Well, I won't. I realise you've got, although we are still in the middle of COVID and there are still things, so I won't take up any more of your time. I will say thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. So
That's a pleasure.
thank you very much for your time.